Hello ladies and gentlemen, today is the first episode of a beautifully crafted documentary explaining the backstory behind the gaming company, Sony Bend Studio. Let's start the timeline by dusting off the old history books of gaming with an elder studio called Infocom. A formed class from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology in 1979 was created for the purpose to teach students of the novel uses of computer softwares. Following the graduation of a handful of students and the adoption of multiple MIT staff sparked the creation of Infocom. Although most may not heard of Infocom, the games they developed set the way for text-based adventures across the world. Zork, being the most knowledgeable, was created in the 1980s under the name Infocom by Tim Anderson, Mark Blank, Dave Lebling, and Bruce Daniels. After the successful launch of the first Zork, two more were launched 1 year after the next. By 1985, a promising product was developed called Cornerstone, an extension to databases created in the hopes to get in on the rapidly flourishing market for small businesses. Following multiple miscalculations and slip-ups, the newly developed software failed with a powerful impact. Much like everything else that hits sprouts of good luck, bad luck follows. After the major investment in Cornerstone and the result coming from it, Infocom devastatingly lays off nearly 50 of its 100 employees. In the quake of this layoff, a few months later they put themselves up for sale to continue producing under the name of IC, otherwise known as Infocom, being purchased by Activision. A small time later, Jim Levy, the head of Activision, leaves his position for unstated reasons, leaving second-in-command Bruce Davis in charge of the company. Although relations between the two companies were neutral at the time of his boss's departure, tides changed when Davis believed they paid too much for the company. Lawsuits to obtain a partial amount of money back followed, along with the way Infocom was ran. Davis pushed the company to create 8 titles a year until one title, Fublitsky, bombed its launch. Tensions between the two rose, and by 1988 rumors were circulating that Activision was thinking about closing Infocom. When 1989 came around, rumors showed and the studio closed its doors. Following the closure of Infocom, founders of the company turned a new page in 1993 by establishing Blank, Berlin & Co., which would create games for the Apple Newton. As the studio progressed for the first 2 years, their name changed to Eidetic, and Christopher Reese became hired. By 1996, the company's first game under the newly developed name became Bubsy 3D for the PlayStation 1. The studio saw this opportunity as a great way to get into console game development, so they jumped on board. The studio's development for Bubsy 3D, however, was compiled by a staff of 8 and rivaled that of Crash Bandicoot. After release, Bubsy 3D was received by the public as a failure due to the fact that transitioning to 3D was challenging for the company, among the previous tasks mentioned. Within the following year, Eidetic's bad luck would change. In 1997, a representative from Sony's 989 Studios, Connie Booth, approached them with a singular memo detailing a game meant to rival 007's GoldenEye. The only thing on the synopsis was about a game revolving around espionage, only gestured on the script via setting and gameplay. Although Bubsy 3D's success was barely visible, Sony held their worry and instead gave them the hope and trust to make a successful exclusive. Within a year, the story had been nearly completed and given a title called Siphon Filter. Following those major stepping stones in game development, they hired an additional 5 members to the overall staff count. Over time, Siphon Filter hit many speed bumps like missed deadlines and restructurings of the game's overall mechanics due to the inexperience of creating third-person games by the staff, and had no real references to creating a stealth game, causing multiple near cancellations. The game, however, was never fully canned due to the fact that Sony still saw great potential in them. By the 17th of February 1999, Siphon Filter was released to miraculous critical praise, creating a positive name for Eidetic and a great relationship between both them and Sony. With a total global sales count of 2.88 million copies sold, sequels soon followed. By 2000, Sony purchased Eidetic and the name was rebranded to what we all now know as Sony Bend Studio. From the second Siphon Filter onward to 2007, 4 more titles were created, each showing less sales than the previous ones. After the final title in the Siphon Filter franchise was created, Siphon Filter Logan's Shadow, the studio decided that they wanted to move on and develop for other franchises. For a few weeks, Sony Ben looked around for a franchise to build off of within Sony's established IPs and found that Insomniac Games' series Resistance was the most relatable to what they've done before with Siphon Filter. Since the Resistance franchise was still in development, that concluded that a PlayStation Portable spin-off would be the best option. Sony Ben Studio immediately crafted a polished prototype of a new Resistance entry, showed it off to Sony Worldwide Studios and Insomniac Games, and they were then approved for development of Resistance Retribution. Roughly 2 years later, on March 17, 2009, Resistance Retribution sold to Northern America with exceptional reviews and a unit shipping of 890,000. After Resistance Retribution's release, they decided to split up the team, one portion towards brainstorming new ideas for a new IP, and letting the other team members, 9 by count, break off and develop a few extended storylines for a spin-off to Naughty Dog's most famed franchise, Uncharted. Most of the ideas Sony Ben announced to Naughty Dog were scrapped until finally coming to an agreement on a story for a game titled Uncharted Golden Abyss. The 9 members came back to Sony Ben to start fully creating an Uncharted game. Alongside the creation of this game, Ben and Naughty Dog were in close contact with each other to make sure the original vision was met. Naughty Dog eventually allowed Sony Ben to use Uncharted Drake's Deception and Uncharted 2 Among Thieves assets, most likely to cut development time so that Uncharted Golden Abyss could be a launch title for the PlayStation Vita. When Golden Abyss finally hit its release date on February 12th of 2012, the game sold 1.5 million units, giving Sony Ben a bigger title known as the ones who created one of the best portable adventure titles of all time. For 4 years after Uncharted Golden Abyss, Sony Ben's announcements of new games or updates in general abruptly hushed down to silence. Then as questions started to circulate about what was going on behind Sony Ben's doors, PlayStation Experience 2016 came around and all was revealed. The new game or story subject was developing finally became unfogged, titled Days Gone. Days Gone, by all interviews, is about an MC named Deacon St. John who lost his loved one while trying to survive in an apocalyptic location called Farewell, Oregon, based off of the studio's real-life and prior location, Bend, Oregon. The infected called Freakers are what really motivates Deacon to stay on his feet as he carries on his tradition as being a biker. Just remember these 3 simple words as you wait for more to be revealed. Dead Don't Ride. Days Gone does not have a set release date, but is rumored to release in the second quarter of 2017. As for the rest of the story about Sony Ben Studio, well, we'll just have to wait and see. What do you guys want to see next as a history lesson? Tell me down below in the comments section and I'll see what I can do. This is Adolescent Flame, and I am out. Peace guys, thank you very much for watching. Bye bye.